After years of decline, sales of passenger cars have recently stabilized and get this, actually grown. Is it a fad? Is it a trend? This is topic C. Let's stop a minute, go back a little bit. Latter part of the last 10 years, the domestic manufacturers have pretty much phased out cars. There's a few here and there, but the bread and butter cars, the volume cars that they used to build, the Ford Fusion, variety of Chevy sedans and hatchbacks, even Stellantis through Dodge and Chrysler. They don't build them anymore. Interesting exception. Toyota Camry, Honda Accord, Nissan Altima, Hyundai Sonata, Kia now K5. These are vehicles that the automakers continued to build even as the market was shrinking. Here's what they know. 1 out of every 5 vehicles still sold in America is a passenger car. That's roughly 3.6 million vehicles, or the equivalent of about 12 assembly plants worth production, just so you know. Nissan even went as far a few years back, said, we're going to continue to build the Altima because 2 reasons. 1, we feel that there will still be a market because of so many people dropping out that we will still do well as being one of the last men standing. Also, the automakers will tell you what they're seeing is generational. Back in the day, when I was coming up, kids didn't want to own what mom was driving in back then. Mom was driving a minivan, so oh my God, I could never own a minivan. Or, a big boat of a car. So what did they buy? They bought anything else that didn't quite look like that, which was SUVs and trucks and crossovers. Well, chances are now grandma and grandpa are probably driving a small to compact crossover SUV. Dad is probably driving a full-size pickup. And mom probably has some size of crossover or SUV. And the kids are going, oh, I don't want to drive what mom and grandpa driving. Guess what? Passenger cars. Here's something else to think about. Passenger cars cost less. They're not as hard to build. They get better fuel economy. Things that made them popular for the better part of 100 years. Coming full circle. Industry observers believe that what we're seeing as the pandemic kind of recedes is that there may be an actual settling in the marketplace where the natural flow of passenger cars as a percentage of the mix would be right around 20%. And we'll see about that. Now, to be honest, the cars I named, which were best sellers for years, and I'm talking 300,000 and 400,000 units a year, are selling anywhere from 1/3 to 1/2 that now. And they're still the leaders, but they're not selling in the volumes. And newsflash, in case you were wondering, Chevy still builds the Malibu. Chevy Malibu, to my knowledge, right now, is still in production. We don't know how much longer, but it's one of the few that has survived the cuts. Fun fact, Chevy Equinox, current generation, is based off of the Malibu. Thought you should know that. But anyway, it gets down to economics like it always has been. With the industry-wide average vehicle transaction prices hovering around $45,000 and is predicted by Toyota Motor North America to reach $50,000 this year. Average price. That means half the vehicles sold cost more and half the vehicles sold cost less. $50,000. The industry knew a tipping point was coming. The question will be, will electric vehicles impact this mix? Because as they scale them up and they move further down market, they're going to go for way less than 50 grand. Chevy's going to use the Equinox as that point of the spear, if you will, in getting those costs down. We should see. Sedan, coupe, convertible, hatchback, sports car, performance car nameplates, which have been dropped from a number of brands' lineups over the last several years in favor of crossovers, pickups, SUVs, represented 21.4% of the 3.6 million new vehicles sold in the U.S. during the first quarter of this year. 21.4. And it had been dropping for the last 20 years. 2002, by the way, was the first year that trucks, SUVs, and crossovers sold more than passenger cars. That was 21 years ago. And as you've seen all around you, they've only increased. You've also noticed you haven't seen a new car in quite a while. Although what you're seeing with EVs, you may actually see cars, but right now you're seeing the equivalent of, the Model 3, which is Tesla, Model S, which is Tesla, the Lucid Air, which is expensive, but a beautiful car. Will the falling costs as they start to get a handle on the money they spent to develop the supply chains for the electric vehicles actually lead to a renaissance in maybe passenger cars that are EVs? Maybe. Costs a lot to build a truck. Costs a lot of money in batteries to build a truck. And we've talked about the weight of those batteries. In the case of the Ford Lightning, the batteries in the Ford Lightning weigh as much as a Honda Civic. Just the batteries. So if you can get smaller, further, less cost, further EVs, may also help the renaissance of passenger cars. But passenger cars, for those of you all that said you'll never own a truck, are not totally going away. And again, Nissan Altima, the folks at Nissan actually said this first. Cautionary tale for you. In the middle of all of this crisis during the pandemic and chips were hard to come by, Volkswagen made a decision. They came out with the Taos, and they were building the Tiguan, which was at the lower end of their market. Well, they're built in the same factory as the Volkswagen Jetta, their smaller passenger car. And Volkswagen said, hey, we've got this entry-level crossover. We're going to divert production and chips from Jetta to build this. And the dealers had a fit. What they told Volkswagen is, we need Jettas. Why? Because there's still some people who want a sedan. They don't want a truck or an SUV. And what happened in Volkswagen's case is they didn't convert them. These folks that wanted a Jetta, trading in a Jetta, wanted a Volkswagen car. Instead of buying the more profitable crossover and SUVs that Volkswagen was buying, went to a competitor and bought a sedan. Imagine that. I think that the Asian makes are on to something, that they may actually get their comeuppance before it's all over, because they hung on long enough to see the market kind of shake itself from this truck frenzy it's been in 20 years, and with the rising price of everything, mid-sized cars, compact cars, and the few subcompacts that are around may actually turn out to be the best value and worth considering again, and power to the dealers and the manufacturers that figured that out and stayed the course all these years. Because honestly, their perseverance will be rewarded.